Professor Peebles from the New School, sorry to startle you, but from the New School yesterday mentioned that he had found our database online very useful, and some of you may not know about that, and we were going to talk about this tomorrow in the closed door session, but just now so that you know and so that visitors know as well, we have an archive of journal articles and papers and policy reports available through a portal on our website. We are using Mendeley, which is a bibliographic databasing service. It's called Mendeley. You'll see a little icon for it right on our homepage. You can click on that and join our Mendeley library, and in there you'll find a whole bunch of articles and resources. And you can like search by keyword or by country, that kind of a thing. And we're constantly adding to that. The graduate students assistant in the back there, Taylor and Beth and others who aren't here have been working on that all along. Just to give a very quick overview of some of the points that came out yesterday that really struck me, and I think the rest of us in the room, and I know there have been a lot of little conversations about some of these things. First, in a world where I think we imagine that mobile money is a kind of thing that either sits to one side of or even is replacing airtime transfers, we heard an awful lot yesterday really about the interface between mobile money and airtime and the continued relevance of airtime for people as a mechanism of money transfer and as a part of people's overall financial portfolio. There's definitely more work to be done there and more information to be mined out of the wonderful presentations that we had yesterday. Another thing that really struck me, and this came out most forcefully maybe in Timothy's paper on Musoni, is the importance of there being a kind of non-digital social infrastructure underneath any kind of successful mobile money infrastructure. We really saw the importance of these kind of two parallel infrastructures working with each other, working in coordination with one another to get a service that would actually take off and work. And on that same point, we also heard an awful lot about resistances to mobile money and resistances to the adoption of e-money. A lot of that had to do with people's questions around the tangibility of the substance of money or of the other things that have been used as stores of value, like gold or like cattle. Along the kind of material culture line, there was an awful lot of work presented yesterday on things like material practices of storing, hiding, but also displaying. And there was the wonderful work from Magdalena and Isabella's paper about gold and about how in some contexts gold is a thing that you secret away, and in others it's a thing that you display quite proudly. We heard, in Eric's talk, I was really struck, and this was tweeted about as well, by the kind of physicality of walking from place to place to place, and how our accounts of financial inclusion need to really be attentive to the lived experience of moving through a landscape where there's all kind of barriers. There's not just a smooth walk from point A to point B. That also was really evident in the wonderful side-by-side videos in the presentation from the Philippines yesterday. So those are just a few little highlights and some things that have been sort of churning around so far. I also was really struck by a side conversation where there was a little bit of an argument about, how come mobile money hasn't taken off? And one person said, "Oh, come on, it just started." And someone else said, "Oh, no, it's been a while." So I think we might want to think about that too. What is our own time horizon of expectations here around mobile money and what it will do in the developing world? So just with those opening comments, I want to now invite our first panel up to the platform here, and also Jake Kendall from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who's joining us today. Come on up. So we're very pleased today to have Jake Kendall with us. He's a senior program officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and he is also our program officer. And we're delighted he can join us to chair this panel. And I think you were going to say a couple words ahead of time and maybe show a slide or no? So Jake will be introducing our panelists and serving as timekeeper and moderator. And with that, we will get started.
Thanks, Bill. So yeah, I'm Jake Kendall from the Gates Foundation. I'm really excited to be here. This is one of my favorite research grants. There's always so many different, angles and themes that come out of the research. A lot of the other research grants are very focused on, one particular very narrow subject. And here, over the course of the past 2 days, as Bill was sort of summarizing for us, there's just been so many different themes and angles and takes on how people use mobile money, the benefits they get out of it, and sort of the social impacts and all that kind of thing. So it's really a fascinating conference, and I'm glad to be here. This panel also is very interesting, focusing on the sort of some of the groups that have harder time, potentially, or more often excluded from using mobile money or financial services. So obviously a very important topic. Without further ado, then, I'll just introduce the first speakers. Their paper is The Use of Mobile Money Services and Platforms Among the Visually Impaired in Kenya. And their question is, any impact on poverty reduction? And that's Ndunge Kiti from Houghton College and Jane Mutinda from Kenyatta University.
Okay, good morning. My name, as you've been told, is Jane Mutinda from Kenyatta University, and this morning we are going to make a presentation on the use of mobile money services among the visually impaired in Kenya. First and foremost, before we make the presentation, I want to thank the IMTFI for sponsoring our research and also the research that they sponsored last year. We are very, very grateful, Bill and Jenny, and the entire group here. So thank you very much. Our presentation is going to be in two parts. 50% of the presentation is going to be on our PowerPoint presentation, and then the other 50 is going to be a video which we developed just recently in Kenya. And because we've lost some bit of time, I'm going to call upon my co-researcher, Ndunge, to start us off. Thank you. And then we'll take questions later.
Go. Right here. Thank you. Good morning. Because of time, we're going to go rather quickly through the presentation because we want to ensure we have enough time to watch the video because I think it'll put a lot of our research into context. I want to start with this first slide, and the pictures that you see there are of the women who challenged us to actually look at this question about how mobile money technology impacts people with visual impairment. As mentioned by my co-researcher, our research last year was looking at the use of mobile money services amongst women's groups. One of those groups out of the 21 groups we interviewed in Eastern Kenya was 14 women who were visually impaired. And those are some of the women that you see there. And they mentioned to us, they challenged us, why don't you come back and look at the issues of mobile money technology as they impact the visually impaired? Because it's very different from the sighted, and that's what we're discovering. Just to put it in context real quickly, and I'm going to go fast through the presentation, but don't worry, there is a copy of this presentation in the back there with some of our materials displayed from the different organizations that work with visual impaired. So you can actually catch up and look at some of the details of the presentation. But first, the research, like we mentioned, was a follow-up that was made, a challenge that was made to us by these women who are visually impaired. We see this a lot as a pilot study. What we have found is that there's been very little conversation and dialogue around mobile money technology as it impacts people with visual impairment in Kenya. Actually, most of the places we went to do interviews, and we pretty much did all the key organizations and institutions that work with people with visual impairment, were shocked that we were even interested in this topic. that we were even interested in looking at how it impacts people with visual impairment. So we recognize our research is not complete, but we are just scratching the surface. And so we think there's a lot of opportunity to really look at this further. Again, we're going to highlight some of the themes. We have tons of data. That folder there is a whole bunch of transcripts. We have not touched even the analysis, but what we are going to present today is many of the themes we heard during our workshop and during the process of interviewing in terms of some of the notes we took. Okay. I'm not sure I'm hitting the right. Oh, there. Just a brief quote just to highlight. This was the quote that really challenged us. It was just a recognition that oftentimes this we saw quite frequently. The fact that people who were visually impaired would try to use technology, but oftentimes because they're dependent on somebody else, especially in terms of using M-Pesa where they have to give their PIN number away, they often ended up actually losing money because people, if they didn't trust them or if the agent was not straightforward, they ended up losing money. So we saw this over and kept hearing it over and over again. Am I hitting the wrong button? Okay. Just to give a little bit of statistics in this first slide here, a fourth of Kenya's population, roughly, is estimated, are people who are impacted by disabilities. About a little over 500,000 of those are people with visual impairment. One of the things we discovered very quickly, and we heard over and over again, there's very little data on people with visual impairment in Kenya. I mean, as it is a problem globally, we have a problem in Kenya. The other point there, 21% of children with visual impairment attending school, very low percentage. When education is one of the ways to empower people with visual impairment to move out of poverty, this is a problem. And then you see some of the gender dynamics there, that there's often a higher number of females that often are impacted by a disability based on. These are just some of the definitions, and I'm not going to go through them. It's just highlighting some of the definitions we were using from the Persons with Disability Act, just highlighting the fact that a disability covers different, whether it's sensory, mental, and obviously we're looking at the visual. And then the second, the visual impairment, is just to highlight visual impairment in Kenya's definition and constitution does include low vision and complete blindness as well. The poverty visual impairment link, we've looked at literature review, and as we look at some of the details in terms of what people have written on this topic, it's clear that there is a poverty visual impairment link in the literature. We heard it over and over again in our study. And so it raises a question for us. How does mobile technology really help address pulling people, especially people with visual impairment, out of poverty, especially when they're already attuned to being in a cycle? This quote was mentioned by one of our interviewees, and I think it speaks it all. Poverty and visual impairment are brothers. In other words, we kept hearing they're synonymous. The fact that you have visual impairment, it is synonymous to your experience. Again, one of the other issues, Bill just mentioned in his summary about the whole aspect of social infrastructure. That is one thing we're understanding very quickly, is that visual impairment must be seen within a broader context rather than just the use of technology. Understanding some of the socio-economic, political context in which oftentimes people with visual impairment are engaged or are impacted. And so this is just to highlight the fact that technology has to be seen from an interdisciplinary approach as well. So a lot of our focus looked at our research questions, looked at some of the experiences, social, economic, cultural, experiences of people with visual impairment. We also looked at the use and the access to products and services, and then we looked at policy practices that are in place, whether by our government, whether by some of the companies that are working in this area that make an impact as well. Some of the preliminary themes that became quite clear to us. On the left-hand side here, we have some of the opportunities. On the right-hand side, we have some of the obstacles we're hearing. And these are just general thematic areas. And I just want to highlight about the third one down, ability and diversity. We heard over and over, disability doesn't mean we don't have the ability to do something. Disability is not inability, kept being emphasized to us. Yet oftentimes people with disabilities are seen as a burden and people having inability. Therefore, it perpetuates the idea that they always have to be dependent, and it creates a big problem with mobile money services, especially in terms of issues of privacy and others. Relevant initiatives are required to address this problem, the last point here, yet there's lack of data and evidence that can really support addressing some of these issues. So these were just to highlight some of the issues that came up in a broad sense, and I'm going to go through them, just highlighting just a few of them. The fact that integration and inclusion are often what we seek for people with visual impairment, yet we saw a lot of isolation and stigma. In fact, we heard over and over, until we address the issue of stigma of people with disabilities, we'll never be able to even address some of these technological issues as well. And these are just some of the quotes. We are only impaired, not disabled, just another emphasis. We are people with special abilities. We actually were in the Thika School for the Blind, and one of the interviewees said to us, actually, it's often you-sighted people who are blind, because your knowledge about us is so narrow and is so limited. And so we thought that was an interesting way to highlight this. Again, another quote that in a sense reflects some of the issues in terms of access. A person with any disability is entitled to access appropriate means of communication, materials, and devices. And that's actually a quote from our Constitution, the Kenyan Constitution, in terms of people having access to some of these. In terms of the use of technology, some of the themes we're starting to see that have come out. Affordability is a big one, yet much of the cost pretty much prices people with disability or people with visual impairment out in terms of access. A lot of privacy issues. They want autonomy, but there's lack of autonomy because they have to give somebody their PIN number, for example, using M-Pesa. Security versus fraud, distrust. Improving livelihoods, the fact that mobile money technology could improve their livelihoods, but yet they're often stuck in a poverty cycle. Diversification in terms of services, resources, but clearly from everybody we talked to, Safaricom clearly has a monopoly. And so they were highlighting, well, if these other companies would be looking at some of these issues, maybe there'll be more access, more affordability, and others. And then policy needs to be in place yet, understanding people's reality and practice. Sometimes there's a disconnect. Another quote that somewhat emphasizes this, one of the individuals from one of the member organizations working with people with visual impairment, mobile banking is supposed to work for everyone, so it is paramount to provide access of these resources, again emphasizing the use. And then another quote here, we thought this was interesting. This was in Machakos, and we took a picture of it. This is actually the way they train people to study Braille, and they use soda caps or beer caps, and they've developed a whole Braille system. But it just goes to show you the lack of access and the lack of resources that oftentimes are made available to these institutions with people with visual impairment as well. Some of the policy implications, frameworks we want to use to understand these issues, in terms of as we analyze data, some of the documents we've collected. On the left-hand side here are some of the international frameworks, the UN Convention. I hope many of you heard in the news the debate about the Disability Act that is going on in the US Congress. And then Africa Decade of Persons with Disabilities, the ILO, and then some of the others that are specific to Kenya, the National Development Plan, the Persons with Disability Act, and others, and the Constitution as well. So these are some of the documents we feel we have to see. We also realize, because we have to understand a lot of the broader issues, and we've been challenged to do that, we're probably going to have to use this framework from World Health Organization. It's the community-based rehabilitation model, understanding, especially these different categories, what are some of the health issues, education issues, livelihood, social, and empowerment. So these are things we're going to have to look at in order for us to even get down to understand how we deal with technology and others. So this is a framework we want to look more into in terms of understanding some of the situations. Others, in terms of policy implications, some of the themes, education, clearly sensitization of the public or society, and then just pushing and making available formal education for people with disabilities. Improving data information systems, this was emphasized. They said we do not have data. We don't even know really the number of people who are visually impaired in the country, and therefore we need. And then appropriate products and services, and then accessibility based on issues of cost, training, gender, security, and others. Creating employment opportunities was emphasized. That was an issue. On the left here, you see Dennis is speaking, is sharing. He's actually visually impaired, and he's actually an M-Pesa agent. The Safaricom people came to our workshop, and they could not believe it. They said, we have never heard of this in this country. And so after the workshop, they went and visited Dennis in his stall, and he was a great asset and a great inspiration to other people with visual impairment. You know, they kept emphasizing, why don't we hear more stories like this? Somebody who's branched out, taken the risk to even be an agent and find employment. And then others, effective partnerships for multi-sectoral approach. Clearly, there was emphasis, especially in our workshop, this was part of our workshop, that we are going to have to work across sectors in order to address this problem, to get to the root of addressing some of these. And this is just a quote to end here. Every day, millions of people around the world who have a disability are faced with frustrating, even impossible situations. These people should enjoy the same services and opportunities in life as everybody else. And I think it's just a reminder to us that as we look at inclusion in terms of mobile technology, we have to look at some of these populations that are often excluded within our societies and not even, we heard a lot that people with visual impairment kept telling us, we're not even a market, so we're not even sure this would even work. Now we're going to turn to briefly a video that was produced by one of our students. One of the things we did in this project, and thanks to IMTFI, this has been an excellent 2 years of engaging students in both our academic institutions. And so we're going to show a video that was produced by one of our students who came to Kenya with us. This is part of a class assignment. So hopefully Kendall will give us grace to show the whole video. Sorry, it's 10 minutes. It's going to be hard. Okay, sorry. This is a journey which illustrates how research on mobile money technology can lead to changes in policy and practice. It highlights people's experiences and realities in addressing poverty. My name is Dunge Kiti. I am a member of the Vinawaka Women's Group. It is started by a few ladies coming together with common views about enhancing each other's standard of living. Every month we come together as a group to socialize, to support one another, and also we give some money. And every month that money goes to one particular individual of the group. And this would go a long way in helping that person to either put it in a business or maybe pay something like school fees. We started saving that money every month. So you could take a loan out of our group resources and develop a business or do something that you needed to do for your family or for your community.
Since I started my business, it's more than 10 years now, but I've never gone to a bank to ask for a loan for the business. My business has been grown and brought to where it is, where I'm serving about 1,000 people every day. It has been financed by Vinawak throughout.
In 2007, Vinyawaka did a proposal to NEPAD. We got some money, which we used to train 26 women groups.
We trained women in management, financial management. We trained them in human resource issues. We trained them in communication issues.
After we met Vinyawaka is when we started thinking of greater things like investing in treasury deals. We started thinking of even diversifying our development initiatives. And to be sincere, that group, Vinyawaka, they opened our eyes.
In 2010, we wrote a proposal. What we wanted to do was to look at how the mobile money services are affecting our women's groups. We wanted to find out if they're using mobile money services, how they're using them, and how they impact them as a group.
Before, I used to go to Western Union, I could stay there for more than 1 hour, and then they say the money is not there.
Our basic findings was that, yes, mobile money services are being used. The main one that's being used by all our groups is M-Pesa by Safaricom. M-Pesa is a mobile money service which facilitates various financial transactions through the mobile phone. It allows users to transfer, deposit, or withdraw money almost anywhere with the use of their mobile phone and a PIN number. We found out they use it for different reasons.
M-Pesa, it has improved the life of women. You withdraw the money from the account to the M-Pesa, and then you send it to the destination where you want to send the money.
The chicken which was delivered here came all the way from Jambu. That person didn't come, but I will pay him through the M-Pesa. If he was to come for his money, it would be an extra expense, so it's a very convenient way of transacting money.
It's also alleviating poverty in our respective areas because people are able to send money to their homes for their parents, for their siblings, without even having to spend money on transport.
If somebody pays you some money, instead of going to keep the money in your house, you can actually still bank it in your mobile. People used to lose money when they're carrying it maybe in their handbags, but nowadays, you can carry it in your mobile.
One of the groups we interviewed was a group of women who were visually impaired. They made a challenge to us that the issues that face people who are visually impaired is very different from the issues that face the sighted.
As a visually impaired person, we are using the same phones like every other person, which doesn't talk. So when it is not talking, you cannot operate the M-Pesa by yourself. You really have to ask someone to assist you.
When I want to withdraw or I want to send money, I can't access the menus because they are not speech enabled. I need to look for my neighbor to read for me.
So they challenged us to write another proposal and come and interview persons with visual impairment to better understand what are some of their experiences, what are some of the socio-cultural issues that they have to deal with, and some of the policies and practices they would suggest service providers and government policymakers in terms of better making this service available for persons with visual impairment.
The visually impaired to access to M-Pesa is a total denial. They struggle. They have a very big problem in accessing to M-Pesa.
I've had times when I buy, for example, I want to buy 10 shillings, I find myself I bought 1,000 shillings.
Just checking how much airtime balance you have on your handset is a challenge, or costs you more than the normal call, which is very unfair.
People with visual impairment use the M-Pesa, but at times we get so many challenges. When you want to check your balance because there is no right communication, you have to use the second person, and at times they might steal from our phones because we don't see.
We found that some of the persons with visual impairment have actually had people take their money out of their accounts because they have access to their PIN number.
We were sitting in my sitting room and we started just talking. They started ting sound. And the next thing he did was to transfer my money in their phone. I'm very suspicious of anybody who now gets hold of my phone. I don't like it.
Within our society, there's still a lot of stigma towards people with visual impairment.
Persons who are visually impaired have no problem in socializing with others. This item is so important to them as much as it is important to sighted persons.
Currently, the research we're doing included a workshop. We invited service providers, we invited policymakers, we invited other members of the community to come and hear some of the basic research findings, but also to come and try to find some of the solutions to the challenges.
My recommendations are resources so that we may be able to create awareness.
All the mobile companies need to consider this, that as they are serving the other customers, they are also serving the people with visual impairment. And since their system is tailored to text, they can also do a voice, because we depend on speech just like they depend on sight.
It is a recommendation which I would make to the Safaricom. If they can improvise a phone, a cheaper one, with all those programs, I think we'll be more comfortable as people with visual impairment.
We would really wish that we get those phones which their M-Pesa would be talking, because that way I would be able now to operate my phone without involving a second party.
Hope the government and all the stakeholders will have policies which are friendly to persons with disabilities.
What we saw at the workshop was a conversation between these groups in order to come up with solutions to the problem. We also heard Safaricom commit itself to trying to produce a product that is more accessible, that is more available, that is more affordable for persons with visual impairment.
Safaricom actually is so much focused on inclusion. And when you talk about inclusion, it's both social inclusion, it also talks about digital inclusion.
We've interacted with the visually impaired, and through this we've developed some voice-driven modules that make it possible for a blind and VI to use a handset.
We are working on text-to-speech, which is an application that's going to be sitting on mobile phones. It's going to be free of charge for all our users. It's able to speak back to you as a user. It tells you where you are in the menu. It can read SMSs for you, and it can help you navigate around your phone.
Increasingly, we hope in the future we're going to see policy and practices change in terms of involving and engaging persons with visual impairment in the process of our economic development, especially using mobile money services.
Great, thanks. So we're going to do questions, but after all three have gone, as I guess we did yesterday. So we're just going to jump right into the next one since we're a little bit short on time here. So next study is titled A Study on Association of Social Capital with Microfinance and Local Savings Programs Among the Muslim Poor in Andhra Pradesh in India. And its author is Rosina Nasir, the University of Hyderabad.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rosina Nasir, and before I start my presentation, I just want to convey my thanks to IMTFI for actually believing in the idea to be, that needs research. So And before starting, I just want to say that this research is in its infancy. I mean, it's just observation which I have done in a period of 2 months. It's altogether 15 to 16 days I have invested in a stretch of 2 months. So the topic is the study on association of social capital with microfinance and the local saving programs among the Muslim poor in Hyderabad. I haven't touched saving programs because I have to do it at length and intensively in the later part. So, but today, okay. So what is actually how I framed the whole presentation is that I'll talk about the financial model in India we have, financial inclusion model we have, and in that model where the trust resides. Okay, where the trust resides in that model, and my whole argument would be with respect to the Putnam conclusion that it's not trust which is responsible for social networking, it is something else. Actually, I'm trying to say it is something, rational choice theory I'm trying to apply over here. That it is not exactly trust which is letting the people to come together in a group and to result in a collectivity and then resulting in an enterprise, a business enterprise, and that can be seen as a way or towards empowerment. So I'm going to argue that, and to argue that, I first like to introduce about the financial inclusion model which are working and what is the how they are functioning and what is the status in India they have. So all the financial inclusion model in India, they start with the poor, and in poor the definition of poor is anybody or anyone who is spending $0.58 equal to $0.58 or less than that in urban areas per day, or $0.47 per day in rural areas as per the Planning Commission 2011. And if you see BPL, that is below poverty line, it is the measure through which Government of India target the poor, and the percentage of BPL in India right now is 29.9% of the total population. After a lot of discussion with respect to discourse on what should be the BPL line, I'm just want line. It is not a ratio. It is a line. So that is poor, and with respect to poor, it is very important to understand the whole trajectory of efforts the government has put in with respect to bring poor from their chronic marginalized situation towards development, to push them towards the development. And the first step in this regard was it is actually self-help group, and this self-help group is to implement a poverty alleviation program. Here I like to make a footnote that in India our financial inclusion is a very in thing in very in discourse right now. But when it started in India, self-help group in 1979 officially, because it has been working informally, but formally when it was started in 1975-79, it was not a financial inclusion, it was more of poverty alleviation, though it is sharing a lot of space and similarity with financial inclusion. Although there are conceptual differences, which is I think is they are irrelevant to talk over here. The whole, this poor group has been targeted, and all the programs and initiatives by the central government of India or state governments, they have been directed towards these people only. So in that, in that movement or in that process, Integrated Rural Development Program was the first program working on the self-help group. And under that, there's a lot of sub-plans have been happening, and especially in Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh has been seen a very conducive environment because of the political, conduciveness and comfortability it has been providing, and a lot of movements have been favoring self-help group. So that's why this experiment in 1979 was being done by the government by doing a lot of studies and pilot studies. And then through that understanding, it is filtered out that self-help group should be women-oriented. In India, if you have just somebody talk about self-help group, actually it is one of the major attributes of self-help group is that it is women-oriented, one. And that thing actually, that definition, the attribute was attached because of this program, that is the Women, Children in Rural Areas program. They said that women should be associated with the self-help group because they need to be empowered and they need to be included in the labor market through self-employment, and that was the whole efforts to encourage women. So this is the whole thing, and there are a lot of sub-plans. I'm just talking about the major plans. Okay, NABARD is one of the parallel organization in India, which is actually parallel organization in terms of microfinance. And but in the initial stage, okay, but in the initial stage, I have a lot of things. 10 minutes. At the initial stage. At the initial stage, NABARD was very hesitant to, consider self-help group as a vehicle, as a potential vehicle towards empowerment and could be included in microfinance. So, but later on, it has accepted, and that lead to self-help group bank linkage program. That is the first microfinance program. Actually, it is more about women. It is more about saving. In this, it's more about saving. And you can see that it has started with 500 in SHGs in 1992 and end up with, right now it is 8 million SHGs by 2012. Another important aspect of SHGs are that they take 6 months, and they do saving, and then in that 6 months, they try to build up trust. That is a social infrastructure I'm looking at. That this trust is actually responsible for less default, trusting people, less default, and that is a social concept has been arguing that the trust should be developed in the 6 months, and that leads to sustainability in terms of finance, in terms of financial sustainability. And then they do internal loan also they give to each other. Other attributes of self-help group, because their weekly meetings and team leader is their small, regular savings they have been doing. All these things are the new development. I think it's not relevant right now. I'll come back to this if it, Now, another model is microfinance model. I'm talking about these two models only. MFI acts as an intermediary and borrows a much larger amount from the bank, mostly from the private bank who do not have rural branches to conduct SHG lending. Members organize into group, either the classic 5 members Grameen bank type group or larger joint liability groups. Here I'd like to make a footnote that this MFIs came into existence as an alternative because SHG group, SHG bank linkages are not penetrating into deep pockets of rural areas because of many constraints with respect to staff, and much more amount is needed. Now, in self-help, in this MFI, self-selection process leads to positive associative matching, that is, group select member of the same risk type forming homogeneous group. So they are selecting people. So trust is lying there. There also, and in this also. So a lot of debate is there, discourse is there in MFI that if you differentiate between self-help group program, bank program linkage and MFI, it is what is missing is trust. Trust is not there in MFI. But if you are trying to build up a group of 5 people based on the joint liability, then you are looking for the people of same kind so that you can reduce the risk with respect to run a business enterprise. And but MFI is a business model. It is more of profit. It is working more as a profitable entity, and in that regard, they don't shy of giving or lending loan to people, to individual SHG groups, or to joint liabilities. There is no model they have been following. They are just following the business model. Wherever they have a profit, they follow it. And then I'll just go ahead. So Andhra Pradesh is the capital because of this high percentage of SHGs and penetration of MFI, that is 30%. But the issue is that if trust is lying, then why MFIs? There are a lot of why there are a lot of suicides people are committing suicides. Those who are the clients of MFIs, there are a lot of reasons that they have been. Because the concern is with respect to customer protection against coercive recovery practices. And in this regard, a lot of things are going on, especially in Andhra Pradesh, ordinance schemes, and there are a lot, MFIs in India, especially in Andhra Pradesh, where it has started, it is at halt, it is in crisis because it is not flourishing as it has been doing. With all these things, the question is that trust is lying everywhere, and then what is, as I said earlier, that what is actually, is it trust or is it something else? Is social capital theory is applicable over here or not? So I just want to, say certain questions with respect to trust, that why it's very important to ponder upon that why do people trust each other? What are the characteristics of these people who trust each other? Is it mutual trust which result in formation of a group, or is it self-interest which brings people together to form groups? How far does the theory of rational choice, that is individualism, penetrating in the concept of social capital? So my whole argument is that, I put my research question that conceiving self-help group as a community where both vertical and social capital, are responsible and are possible and together may result in the solidarity and thus reduce the propensity of default, and regular repayment will be high because group emerges out of economic need-based rational choice and trust becomes secondary. That is my hypothesis. I don't know where it would lead me, but I like to argue that sustainability of any self-help group does not depend only on the social capital, that is trust, shared knowledge, and reciprocity. Important as these are, I'm not denying that they are not important, but also the nature and extent of social relationship at the level of, at the individual level, that is with the group member and the program credit officer staff, and the pursuit of self-interest for each other's member. I just want to introduce the theory of social capital. It is popularly, so there is, it is something very flexible. It's how you understand. That is why I put it popularly, that I made put an underline on it, define on local forms of association that express trust and norms of reciprocity can contribute significantly to the alleviation of poverty worldwide. If you see the discourse with respect to MFI, social capital is very much in thing, and it is started from this definition. And I don't know how long it, I'm just arguing about this definition that it is not reliable when it comes to operation of MFIs. So this is my methodology. I worked in the Charminar area, and I made conducted interviews with 10 team leaders and did one intensive, interviews, or you can say a discussion rather than focus group discussion. I had a discussion with all the 10 to 50 women in the self-help group, and it is characteristics of this self-help. Before. It's very important that before I'll show you the characteristics and then I'll read a case study. I need 5 minutes more. Okay. And see, okay, I'll try to conclude. Let me. So this is about the Muslim population. Muslim population is, highly financially excluded, and in this respect, if you try to understand that, how the SHG Muslim group is working in that area. Though in the later study, I'll go for the control groups and to understand the trust factor, that index I'll create. I'll discuss that thing later because I haven't done, but I'm planning to do that. So I just. This is about the Muslim population, and it's about the Roshan Vikas, which is a mutually aided cooperative thrift society and registered under this Andhra Pradesh, and it emerged under Andhra Pradesh mutually aided cooperative society, and it emerged with the notion to empower women in the whole city. The major thing about this Roshan Vikas is that, I'll just brief it, that what is... Okay. So, let me see. This finding, the major finding is that I found that this Roshan Vikas is actually not helping these women, because both the major aspect of financial inclusion is that women should go to the bank and then conduct, they should know the process and get themselves, see the things, how it is operating and become independent, but it's not happening Roshan Vikas, because all the savings are with Roshan Vikas and they don't know what is the interest rate they have been charging, but they know that weekly they have to pay this amount, and they have no idea about the interest rate. But it is very important at this juncture for me to just read my case study, which is, I'll take some 3-4 minutes. Let me please, otherwise I won't able to make anything in that. Please. Interaction with the SHG I had, and I just want to say that these are the characteristics, and it is with the Yakupura slum SHG, and Mrs. Salima was the team leader and Rihanna dropout. I want to read out that I have visited some SHGs under this Roshan Vikas, but was closely associated with Yakupura slum SHG. And this group locally organized and was formed in 2008 with the efforts of its first leader, Mrs. Salima, who worked as a trainer in the Semestry Center. For the initial 6 months, no group member is eligible to borrow and have to do monthly saving to prove its sustainability. But unlike SHG model, here saving has been made in Roshan Vikas instead of any bank. The group was heterogeneous in age, marital status, and employment status. However, it was homogeneous in socio, religious, and economic aspect. This group constitutes of 12 members now, and earlier it is comprised of 15 members. And a reason given for this withdrawal is that either they have formed or joined another SHG. It was told by the leader that they were not regular in monthly saving and meetings, so in contribution, and thus with the unanimous decision of the group, they have been removed. But it was also found out that these 3 women had been with this group for 6 months, a minimum period to show sustainability and solidarity to become eligible for loan. And 2 months after that, they had left the group one by one. But what are the reasons these women had to save for living? Were they discontent with the functioning of this group, or was it due to their intra-group problems or dispute with loan officer, or due to non-conducive interest rate on the loan product offered by the RV? Here, I would like to acknowledge that the outcomes of social structure are not necessarily positive, because the norm of reciprocity, sharing of information and trust do not reside in individual actor, but in the structure of relation in the concept of social capital, and the same capital that facilitates certain actions within a structure may not be useful, and may even be otherwise outside it. Although the leader of the group gave me the reason for the dropout, I was interested in the perspective or the opinion of the other side. Somehow I traced one dropout woman, Rihanna, and after in-depth investigation, it was found that the kinship and social relationship was closely interwoven with loan approval process. This woman in the paternal cross cousin of the leader, and she suspected that her application has been rejected as a repercussion of the tension in family or financial matter. However, the loan officer explained that her application has been turned down because of her short attendance and lapse in monthly saving. Rihanna was unconvinced and saying everyone has lapsed in 1 or 2 attendance, but many of them are still getting loans. Why should only my application be suddenly turned down? Each time she presented her case, but nothing happened. Subsequently, she stopped attending weekly meetings, finding it awkward to sit through these meetings. Eventually, she came to the conclusion that she is not going to get a loan, and in disgust, she quit the group. So, discussing Rihanna's case in but after many meetings, the group leader unfolded the truth that Rihanna's financial condition was not sound and lending her credit was a risky proposition and may impose a burden on the group if she defaulted. Moreover, being my relative, I would be held responsible for her default. It is a negative aspect of kinship-based horizontal structure of relationship of the SHG, which to some extent supports Rutherford's observation that perfect strangers coming together and constructing and practice trust more easily than people with histories of complex relationship with each other. On the contrary, in that group there are certain mother and sisters are part of groups, and they have group leaders seen group leader told that they are more trustworthy, and now she's contradicting from what she has been doing with her own relatives. So with this, I'm trying to say it is again, just I want to conclude with this case study that it is more of personal relationship which is responsible for sustainability of any group. It is not, what the definition has been promoted to us. So it is through one case study. Maybe later on it will come out something else. Thank you. Thank you for giving me time.
Okay, next we have a paper titled Gender Empowerment and Access to Financial Services in Machakos County in Eastern Kenya. And we have with us Benson Mulemi of Catholic University of Eastern Africa.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning. I want to acknowledge our appreciation to the Institute of Money, Technology and Financial Inclusion for this opportunity. And on behalf of my senior colleagues, Professor Simi Wandiba and Stephen Angendo of Nairobi University, I want to present some preliminary findings of our work. Previous speakers have talked about the issue of money transfer in Kenya. So we shall not go so much into the details of distribution and the politics of the systems. That's the outline of our presentation. I'll present an introduction, statement of the problem, research questions, study objectives, and then the methodology. I'll talk a little bit about the sampling and data collection, and then I'll present the preliminary results. I think it has been pointed out that there is a lot of interest in the financial service, financial inclusion and access in among the poor in marginal areas, and this is based on the assumption that lack of access to financial services contribute to poverty. And we're arguing that mobile money transfer is one of the ways in which access to financial services in Kenya can be boosted. So we have heard about M-Pesa in Kenya, but we want to point out that the other competing companies, we have the M-Pesa as the largest, Airtel Kenya Limited with the Airtel Money, Esa Telecom Kenya with Ucash, Orange Kenya Limited, Orange Money, And then through other facilities like Pesa Point, Pesa is money, the point for withdraw money. And then there's another upcoming service, Tangaza Pesa. Tangaza Pesa is run by some individual entrepreneur. And then there's MobiCash as an important other input contributor. Our problem is this, based on the premise that financial technologies embody gender differences, and these are sociocultural constructs like gender empowerment. People have talked about gender empowerment, and I've talked about technology. When I was sitting there, some colleagues were talking about the issue, whether these services would contribute to, inclusion. But you have to consider that all these are sociocultural constructs, and also gender empowerment is sociocultural construct. Previous speakers have talked about gender empowerment and inclusion. So our argument is that there are few studies on interlinkages between gender empowerment and financial inclusion in banking institutions. And we argue that mobile money transfer in Kenya is also among the services that are affected by the interlinkages between gender empowerment and financial inclusion. Our research questions. The first research question is what business strategies do mobile financial platforms in the study area use? And how do mobile money transfer remittances and payment flows differ along gender lines in the study area? What barriers do each gender face when using mobile money systems? What mobile banking and mobile payment behaviors do men and women exhibit in the study area? And how do mobile money transfer services affect gender relations in the study area? So our study objectives are drawn from those questions we have pointed out. I just wanted to point out the caption we have in the image. That's the Tangaza Pesa transfer, and it is showing some areas of competition that is leading to the fluctuation in the shares in the market between among the mobile providers. They're not quite visible, but they're saying why they are the best. They're saying that they may want to introduce access across mobile money transfer across mobile networks, zero fraud, and more secure, transfer without identity card, and transaction without phone. There is an assumption that people have mobile phones, but people are operating sometimes only with the SIM card, or they're transacting their money using the mobile phones of friends. So there is a kind of contradiction between the mobile money ownership and the ability to use the mobile money transfer services. Our methodology, the study is being conducted in Machakos County in eastern Kenya in 3 administrative divisions covered as shown. And we are including men and women of 18 years and above. And we intend to include representatives of mobile money transfer systems or platforms. That is the study area in Kenya. We have chosen this study area because one of the counties that are considered to be having population of people who are among the poorest, and there is statistics showing that is up to 68% in 1997 were considered to be living below poverty line. In 2000 reports, up to 66% were living in under poverty line. And of course, there is the demographic indicators show an almost equal ratio of in the population of men to women. That is just isolation of the study area in terms of the areas that we are focusing on. We will not go so much into the details of the areas. And sampling and data collection, we have purposive sampling. We sample mobile phone owners and mobile transfer service users. So we intend to target 450 respondents among the mobile money transfer users, 75 female and 75 male in each administrative division that we have indicated, because we have 3. And then we are using interview guide in questionnaire. It's mixed open-end and close-end questionnaires. We have so far interviewed 255 respondents, and we intend to have 6 focus group discussions to be held in each of the administrative districts, and some in-depth interviews with the key informants will be conducted. I'll go straight to some preliminary results. We have observed that with regard to access to financial services, even the mobile transfer services, they're concentrated in relatively high population density areas, that is in townships and shopping centers. So it means that people have to also to walk a long distance to access the services in the shopping centers or the local townships. And the majority of the respondents have indicated that they have ever used mobile money transfer services, and have been owning telephone, at least owned or ever owned a telephone in the last 2 to 10 years before the study. What we have noted that there is a replication of the dominance of Safaricom in this small area. I think I was wondering why Safaricom, because there is maybe this is the politics of network ownership. Mobile money transfer is used in micro entrepreneurship, small business loans, transactions, domestic maintenance, payment of fees, as it has been pointed out by previous presenters. An important theme that we are also focusing on is gender utilization barriers and patterns. We have put some ideas together to incorporate those 2 themes. Maybe the first 2 indicate the popularly mentioned barriers to the use of the mobile money transfer, and probably this is what maybe Safaricom has been trying to deal with: network delays, shortage of float, and fear of fraud and conmanship. I think Safaricom and the government has stepped in through the CCK, the Communication Commission of Kenya, to register the SIM cards, and people are afraid of using these services. And also, it's a time that you may have reported sending money to the wrong person, and sometimes previously it has taken long to retrieve the money from the wrong number that has been sent to. Some people lack handsets. We are saying that we are finding out that although the ownership of mobile phones seems to be high, but actually some people do not have handsets, or maybe they have had handsets that are not functional, and some of them may not be having the features that are required to make the transactions. And we have observed that women receive money more than men for small-scale business and family maintenance. So this is related to the idea of the potential of the mobile money transfer services to contribute to social maintenance and making small, like social maintenance in making gifts, and also helping in relatives and participation in religious contributions and so on. It is interesting how the mobile money transfer is being used now even on television. The televangelists and the lotteries. There is Bonyeza Ushinde. Very many poor people are trying their luck by sending SMS, which cost about 5 shillings. That means a lot to the poor, and they have to try many times. Women, we are saying that women are most recipients of mobile money transfer as support from spouses and sons or relatives in towns. But we have to note that even those in towns who are they depend on, they are finding it very difficult to get enough money to support their families. And I think this is what we may want to focus on also in terms of the sustainability of mobile money transfer in terms of empowerment, because the circle of exchange breaks. One of our colleagues was talking about what it means, because these people they get money from the city or elsewhere and they withdraw the money. And this means that that is the dead end in mobile money transaction. We have a theme on access and perceived benefits. Of course, it has been mentioned many times. It is convenient, affordable, accessible, instant way of accessing financial resources. For those in urban areas, we have also some other service providers, like I've seen in that caption on the back of the Safaricom leaflet. They're talking about better days with M-Pesa and Kenya Power. People are using using the mobile money transfer to pay their bills, which they're finding very, very convenient. And I think it has been pointed out that there are convenient alternatives to banks and other financial transaction modes. And the fees charged on mobile money transfer is lower relative to banks, but it's not necessarily affordable, because there's been an increase in the amounts that people have to pay to withdraw money or send money. And I think many people are struggling with this, because if you have to send money, you have to send money plus the withdrawal charges if you are making some payments. And there is a reduced waiting time, of course, like in the payment of electricity and so on. I want to just point out something about the competition in the mobile market shares of operators. There's been noted some kind of fluctuation in terms of the share in the market among the market operators. Of course, Safaricom is the leading, but with the introduction of other mobile service providers, there's been a kind of fluctuation. So, like these other service providers are taking some shares from for the market market share from Safaricom, which means that it's our hypothesis that probably it could be more efficient with more level playing field, so that other providers can join. Of course, the Tangaza Pesa is also trying to get a niche in the mobile money transfer sphere. I want to point out some issues about mobile money transfer, mobile banking, and gender empowerment. Tentatively, we have found out that really mobile money transfer in Kenya or in Machakos County is part of what this scholar called the Goran Hayden calls a part of the economy of affection and the building of social capital among spouses. Somebody mentioned here yesterday that it's also a very important tool in courtship relations, and it is also contributing very much to building social relationships. I think this is a very important point with regard to the consideration of this facility with regard to financial inclusion, because the money is just perpetuating, the transfer is perpetuating what has been referred to as the economy of affection. And there is an increased inclusion of women in economic decision making. But what he is pointing out is that economic decision making that is associated with the mobile money transfer is still embedded in the social and the non-economic conditions of the communities, which we really want to investigate further. We are pointing out that it is also increasing it is boosting household livelihood by supporting women's businesses. But this is a really basic business. Selling bananas and oranges on the market. Mobile money transfer pay for merchandise, for example, which are obtained on credit. I mean, these simple transactions of loaning and credit for the merchandise for sale among women. The mobile banking and mobile money transfer contribute to women's basic financial and social empowerment. That is very basic, financial and social empowerment. And of course, women are made, they're having more to contribute to family needs. I think those needs have been pointed out in the previous presentations. But of course, I want to point out that probably it's not. It may not be a balanced kind of argument when we talk about gender and we talk about support for women, because these women are relating with men in those societies. So it is here that I want to point out briefly what we may consider to be the consequences of mobile money transfer and this process of financial inclusion on gender relations. I think there are both negative and positive implications, and this means that as we focus on financial empowerment, we may also have the challenge to also consider social empowerment and social development, because we are pointing out that there is there are negative implications, like in terms of the alteration of roles, and that is role conflicts and strain, sometimes abdication, especially the women are pointing out that men are abdicating their responsibility more and more with the advent of this style of financial inclusion. There is also suspicion and mistrust about real family income and misuse and the sources of remittances, because people are able to, they can get remittance from anywhere. And you see, this is basic financial empowerment that may be having negative implications because people are not open about where they get the money from. And as some presenters indicated yesterday, that now people can transact in secret without their spouses knowing, and they can access money and use it maybe to purchase things and buy food and so on. But of course, we have the positive elements there. We have the possibility of strengthening kin and non-kin bonds through ready support for social and cultural events, which were mentioned by some presenter who has done the research in Western Kenya yesterday. We have so much that this money is used for in the social sphere and the cultural area. And this is a contradiction. In some cases, there is an improvement of family relations as women's role in livelihood security efforts and financial participation increase. And this is an important idea that we have to consider, the balancing of the positive and negative implications, because this is an important element for considering in the discourse about financial inclusion. In conclusion, we are pointing out that so far, of course, as we have pointed out, competing mobile money transfer and mobile banking platforms in Kenya coincide with the growing interest in financial inclusion of the poor. But the question that still remains, to what extent? Because as one of the colleagues we are discussing with yesterday was mentioning, that really financial inclusion began with the microfinance. And to what extent is this just replicating the inability to sustain development through the rubric of financial inclusion? The trend really has the potential to enhance livelihood, but it is necessary to analyze and evaluate the implications of gender financial empowerment on social lives of the targeted people, and the relevance of mobile money platforms, business strategies to sustainable financial inclusion and social development is essential. I think this is what we're also trying to analyze in our study. Thank you very much.
Okay. Jenny, what's our budget? What's that? Break at 11, okay. Okay. So I think what we'll do is take just a couple questions. We'll take a couple questions together and then let the panel answer. And then maybe we'll do another round and then we'll see where we are as far as time goes. If you would, please make sure you mention who you're addressing your questions to so that they know how to respond. Why don't we go ahead?
Sure. I'm Catherine Martineau from the University of Michigan. And this isn't so much a question as a comment or a request for comment from the panelists, the papers were great and they were really diverse, and also, well, they were pulling out some interesting issues around trust today that I would love to know more about. I was interested in Rosina's suspicion about trust as something that it seems throughout the talks these last couple days, we've been seeing trust come up again and again as something that mobile money brings into the front of people's minds. And I think there's something about the speed and the easiness of mobile money circulation that makes people quite anxious. And I think that we might think about the modalities of trust. I think that visual impairment can bring to the light new kinds of distrust, or maybe maybe mobile money exacerbates distrust that's already there. And that also in gender relationships, you might have distrust between, or maybe tensions in a household that are then exacerbated by money that moves very freely and that's hard to track. And I think I'd really like to know more about what Rosina's proposing as an alternative to trust, and see if other people on the panel also think that that works for them, or if there are ways that trust, that we can't let go of trust as a problem. So, thanks.
Another question?
Thank you very much for this wonderful papers. I have a question about religion, actually, which came up in the last two presentations. So I'm going to ask something very specifically for Rosina. Have you encountered through your research any religious considerations that make microfinance institutions and their both in terms of challenges and opportunities different for Muslim poor in India as opposed to other groups? And then for the last presentation, I know you said this as a little anecdote, but I mean, it was fascinating when you talked about mobile money services being used for televangelists. And I know it's a side question, but I would be interested in knowing more about that. Oh, I'm sorry, and I'm Smoky Musarai. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at IMTFI.
Anybody have another question?
Hi, I'm Jenna Burrell from the School of Information, UC Berkeley. This question is for the last talk, and it's about this notion of the economy of affection and the empowerment of women through mobile money. I did some similar work, not on mobile money, but on mobile phone access and sharing in rural Uganda. And I found something I think that casts doubt on the necessarily positive consequences of that flow of money from men to women. So I'm wondering if you could address, a potential downside. What I found actually was that in kind of romantic relationships, men would sometimes use phone access as a way to try and get women to enter into relationships with them, which were maybe not entirely willing. And so I'm wondering if you heard anything along those lines in your work in Kenya.
So maybe we should allow the panelists to respond real quick. And actually, I was just going to add on, I really like that question about trust in the beginning. I was curious in the study of visually impaired people, what were the most creative strategies you saw for people? Because trust is clearly huge for them. But in any case, go ahead.
With respect to first question about what is the alternative tool for trust. I'm working on the conceptual framework which has been introduced with respect, social capital being incorporated in MFIs and all financial inclusion discourse. And if you ask me, it's very early to say anything, but whatever the exposure I had with these SHGs or not SHGs in general, it's more about what I'm trying to approach is that about the management issue. The interpersonal relationship can reduce the default, can increase the repayment, and can help the people to understand actually what is financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is not just lending borrowing money and just using for different purposes. Different purposes, that means, they're not using for employment generation. And that is why the whole issue is coming up. Nothing is planned. Things are working as it is being told to them, but without any purpose and where it will go and what will be the consequences, those things are not discussed because it is seen as a business model without ethics. Morality is missing over there. That is why these managemental issues are not, they are very technical in nature. It is, you have to give, you have to deal with people, but there are a lot of, within the layers, there are a lot of ways to deal with, to connect with people. So here you are dealing with not with the object. Human being is not an object, it's a subject, which is interpersonal, which a lot of, the interpersonal, subjectivity is involved, and a lot of dynamics will add to this. So my answer to this would be like this, okay? And the second is religious considerations with respect to Muslim population, definitely. See, as I just made a point that, Muslims' penetration in financial inclusion or banking, it's very low. It has been, reiterated in different committees and even, on different reports. So what I'll give you my observation with respect to this group is that these people, okay, they are, depositing money to Roshan Vikas, okay, but what they're doing, that 25% which is they're saving for internal lending, they are not charging any interest on that because this pressure is from the community. Although when they receive, because in community, when you have a group of 12 women, then it is linked to the community, very, very individualistic connection you have. But when you are, when interest is coming from the Roshan Vikas or, they don't mind. But when you are, connecting with at an interpersonal level, they are not charging anything. As well as I don't have any, this is about one group. So I can't generalize it. But because there are different SHG groups in Kolar region, in Kolar, there's in Karnataka, Muslim SHG groups, they may be charging. I don't know about that. So it needs a lot of intensive, in-depth, research and to say anything substantial.
Great.
Thank you.
Do any of the other panelists want to respond to that question, or should we move on to some of the other ones?
Yeah, maybe I can say something about trust as relates to the visually impaired. When we carried out the interviews, as you saw in the video, one of the ladies saying how they were losing money because they did not trust the person who was handling their phone. But we discovered that in Thika, in Machakos Technical, and in most of the issues, in most of the centers we went to, what they were doing is these visually impaired persons were identifying a person whom they could trust. Like in the video, you saw one of the chaplain of Thika School for the Blind. They tend to trust that person because normally the visually impaired don't really, are not that very open. And so before they get to know you, you have to go through somebody whom they trust. So we discovered in some of the centers, there are people they trust. In Thika School for the Blind, we had the chaplain. In Machakos Technical, we had a lady whom they trusted. In Kenyatta University, we had to go through the disability center to get to them. They don't just trust you. Even for us, it was not that easy. But as they said in the video, until they come up with a mobile phone that speaks to them, then that issue will still continue.
Just to add on to that, in terms of the gatekeepers, one of the things that they kept emphasizing is, how much is this research really going to help us? And so we had to highlight from the very beginning that we are engaging policymakers, and their role, the fact that we brought Safaricom managers to the workshop was very, very effective in conversing with the people who were visually impaired. In fact, what we ended up doing at the workshop, we asked all the different organizations that were there. We had most of the major organizations that work with people with visual impairment. We asked them at the end of the day for 30 minutes, can you just sit up front? And about 12, 15 of them sat up front, and they just got questions fired to them. And that seemed to break a lot of ice, the fact that they could have access to these policymakers, people who are making decisions about their lives. But a lot of it is about access. How do you get access, and how will this make a difference in my life, and how it'll make a difference in their lives?
So we had two other questions. Does anybody want to address those really quickly, and then we can maybe get a couple more questions from the audience?
Yeah, thank you very much for the feedback. Yeah, I think we'll have to go back to our proposition that empowerment and mobile money, financial inclusion technologies are a sociocultural construct, in the sense that they go with the conventions of the localities. So it's really a difficult aspect to address with using a single answer, because mobile money transfer is a necessary evil in this society, in developing countries. Mistrust among spouses. Where are they getting money when the man has denied them the money to, particular societies? This is a punishment. People are divorcing, and they're able to pay rent because of exchanges from relatives and so on. So I think it's a difficult point to look at, in the sense of the dynamics of society, so that you cannot have a structure that has materially succeeded elsewhere necessarily succeeding somewhere else. And I think that's an important aspect that we have to look at with regard to programs that focus on gender, because most of the programs that are focusing on gender, they're taking women aside and empowering them. And yet they are supposed to relate with the men they are living with. And I think the issue of relationships, really, since the mobile phone is really such an impersonal gadget, it's reducing the personal distance. So people can send SMS to solicit relationships. People can send money, and some people will return the money, but some will use, and you see that is a point in which it depends on now personal integrity. So it's true that it's a way in which you can have relationships that were not intended occurring. The same way internet, people have met on internet and they have related as such. And with the issue of televangelism and mobile money transfer, I think it's a very interesting issue in Kenya that evangelists are praying for people on television. And if you look at the audience, majority are women. And one of the requirements, now, if you can make a contribution using the M-Pesa number that is being scrolled the television. And there is also this other, I could say that some people have looked at this as a fraudulent way of getting money from poor people. That there is a lottery where people are sending SMS to win. And recently, there were some evangelists who were saying, for you to win, send some money on this number so that you can be prayed for. So it's like a kind of impersonal way of getting small monies from the poor people. And you see, with the advent of mobile phone, we have been wondering, where are poor people getting money to use the mobile phone? But some people have argued that probably it's because, to see your relative, you needed to take a bus to go to the person. So you consider, I'd rather use 20 shillings to talk to my relative than
than travel to the place. So I think this is the complexities where there is a lot of mistrust and complex dynamics about this element, technological element. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we have time for maybe one more question from the audience, and then we'll probably have to wrap up.
This question is to Ndunge and Jane. Your study was very interesting, and it's very impressive that you are able to bring to your workshop the various stakeholders, including the service providers, and so on and so forth. And Safaricom is developing a product that is useful for this group of people. And I saw some of my colleagues in there who are concerned about the development of technology for the visually impaired. Now, the question is, to what extent do you think you will participate in the development of this product with Safaricom? Do you see a role for yourselves as researchers, or do you see yourselves as having raised the issue that is the end of it? And I'm concerned generally about the involvement of researchers in product development in general. So I want to hear your view.
Okay,
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Tim Waema from University of Nairobi.
Okay, maybe I can start. Thank you, Professor. Actually, some of your colleagues that came to the workshop, I met them in your workshop, you know, the one I attended, and that's how they told me that they are developing that product. And so when we were doing this workshop, we invited them, and they came, and indeed, actually they demonstrated what they are developing for the visually impaired. And apparently, I think they were working in conjunction with Safaricom. As far as participating in research, ours was probably to find out what is happening in that area. But if I may go backwards, the other research we did, which we presented here last year, the one on women groups in Eastern Kenya, what we've learned now from Safaricom, when we presented our findings also in another workshop and they attended, the Safaricom people have now developed a product, or rather they are developing a product for the women groups whereby they can pay their monthly contributions into one common fund. And then if probably, you know the way it works, it is disbursed to the recipient. So it is out of our research, probably, and they have confirmed that they are going to launch a product. That way, we are following up with them, and we want to see what happens probably in January. But maybe Ndunge can explain further.
No, I just want to emphasize, actually yesterday when the first presenter presented talking about Safaricom, we text them to ask whether we could say what she just said. And it's just an emphasis. It is research that they're doing. It's not complete product, but it was a direct result of them attending the workshop and recognizing some of the needs of women and some of the issues as they listen to some of the women groups present. And since we're talking about Safaricom and the domination of Safaricom, unfortunately, they have also sent keychains for all of you here. And so you're going to get another keychain. I hope there's enough for you to take one. And so help yourself. We're going to put them in the back. So I guess, I don't know what we should call that, but you can thank Safaricom.
What a great note to end on. Thank you.